What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, reviewing today Yakuza 6, The Song of Life. Over the years, I've tried to learn a few other languages, mostly so I could play more stuff from all around the world that may not have been translated into English. In my studies, there's one word I've always loved in Japanese that doesn't exist in any other culture, and that's tsunade. This is a term that's used to describe somebody who's quite cold and angry when you first meet them, but secretly is really a soft person who just wants to help their friends. The hero of Yakuza is a total tsunade, and you can't help but like him for it. Kazuma is a man who's grown up surrounded by crime and mayhem, and yet despite all that, he always tries to do what he thinks is the correct path. Whether it be trying to beat up the bad guys that he thinks are the worst, or when he has to extort people because he is part of the mob, he's still doing what he thinks is the right thing. Before we go any further in this review, I do want to answer the question that I'm sure the most of you are asking, which is this a good place to start? And surprisingly, yes. You can start the series right here at Yakuza 6 and not miss anything. The reason why is, the opening has a scene where our main character is in a coma for a short time because of his previous boss fight at the end of Yakuza 5. And during that, we go into a sort of dream sequence where we can talk to all the different main characters from throughout the entire franchise, and each one tells you who they are, what they've done, and why you're buddies. This really gets you up to speed quickly, and even somebody like me who hasn't played some of these games in a decade, I immediately knew exactly what was going on. For the rest of the game, I was completely brought up on who the good guys are, who I'm supposed to protect, and who needs an absolute beatdown. Speaking of people who absolutely need a good hurting, this game is all about revenge. Since Kazuma is a man with a heart of gold, throughout the series he's actually tried to help as many people as he could, specifically orphans. Being raised without a family really hurt Kazuma deep down in his soul, and because of it, he wanted to make sure that other people didn't have to suffer in the same way he did. One of the ways he decided to change this is taking in all the orphans he can and actually opening an entire house for homeless children. Along with this, he actually adopted a little girl in one of the previous games and raised her as his own daughter. This game begins though with Kazuma deciding that the best thing to do for his family of adopted people is to go to prison, to take the fall for some crimes in his past and just kind of disappear for a bit. Let the shadow of the Yakuza go away from his family so that they can live normal lives. During this though, his daughter goes up missing. He's only in jail for 3 short years, but when he comes out, she's gone. Nobody's seen her, nobody has any idea where she's at. By investigating, we find out that she's actually been in a terrible accident. She was hit by a car somehow, and on top of that, the mystery goes even deeper because somehow she has a kid. Kazuma has to get to the bottom of this, figuring out who hurt our little girl and to figure out who the father of this child is. Now, if you've never played a Yakuza game, these are phenomenal RPGs because while there is a main story here, which in this case is revenge, the real appeal is the magnificent world building. Every single corner of this town has mini games, arcades, and really eccentric side quests. These ones in this game in particular are some of the craziest yet. Like, at one point I was walking down the street and I bumped into a couple that was in an argument about whether or not this guy was spending money on internet chat rooms trying to talk to girls on webcam. And since my character is confused and he just got out of jail, he actually takes you to an internet cafe and teaches you how to chat up women online. Now, if that's not bizarre enough, there's also even crazier ones than that. Like, I saw this schoolgirl fall down a flight of stairs and this businessman tried to save her, and somehow when they hit the bottom of the staircase, they had magically switched bodies, and it was my job to try and investigate if there was any way to get them to swap back. There's even a freaking time traveler quest. Every mission of this game is so silly and absurd, like trying to go to a cat cafe and help them round up a bunch of stray kittens. Every moment of this game is about trying to establish that even though Kazuma is such a serious person, the world around him could not be more goofy. To go along with this, there are so many random secrets that you can stumble upon in Japan. At one point, I was just trying to find each and every arcade machine out of curiosity. This town is pretty dang big, and I was just wanting to see, well, what all I could play. Much like real-life Japan, there are different arcades all over the place, and each one has a different theme to it. Some of them have more modern stuff like Virtual Fighter, while other ones on the other side of town have stuff like really retro games. However, all of these are extremely fun, complete recreations of the original arcade games. If you're wanting something a little bit more physical though, you can do stuff like batting cages or challenge these strange women to a game of darts. These all establish the fact that this world feels so completely alive. I found myself just wanting to try and master every single minigame I could because it truly felt like something that would improve myself, and in fact, it does improve your character. Something I love the most about the Yakuza RPGs is that it really kind of establishes that in order to be a good fighter, you need to be more than just strong physically. While you can wander around and beat up random thugs to make your muscles stronger or go to the gym and lift weights, what's also important is sharpening your mind. This is done by actually trying to talk to people or beating people in arcade games. Doing stuff like playing mahjong sharpens your mind, and that is a separate set of experience points. In order to be truly deadly in hand-to-hand combat, you need to be able to see your enemy's weaknesses, which requires a sharp set of eyes and a quick mind. I love the fact that you really do have to do everything in order to be the best. You need to do side quests. You need to talk to random people on street corners and help out everybody in their own little missions and try and figure out your own path. There's so many different sights to see and places to go here, and each one offers some sort of different experience. But of all the stuff they've added into this game that really kind of changes up the series as a whole, there is one thing that, it seems a little bit out of place. It's this new strategy mode called Clan Wars. I don't quite think that this is really something they should have done, honestly. So basically, you're now able to recruit different gang members. By wandering around and beating up thugs that are young and impressionable, they'll actually try and follow you. They'll want to join your gang, and so because of it, you can actually pit them against other gangs in small wars. Now, this doesn't really work like Final Fantasy Tactics. Instead, you sort of just command them in a very general sense, moving them forward in a tiny alley and using slight special moves like an attack that heals everybody or a super kick. It's something that I think works really well on paper, but in execution, it's sloppy at best. Certain story moments require you to use this, but the rest of the time, I completely ignored it. It's one of those things that is cool that they added it in, but probably needed a little bit more patching in order to really function as well as they probably hoped. The only other real tiny downsides of this game is I think the animations are a little bit limited. There are so many fights in this game. I mean, seriously, our hero is a guy who can't even get through a baseball game without punching somebody in the face, and that's why I love him. However, there are only a certain amount of different ways you can hit people, and eventually you kind of see everything. Every single spin attack is seen 1,000 times, and there's only so many different ways I can hit somebody in the face with a bicycle before I realized that there just aren't that many weapons. Even as you unlock new abilities, the way you fight is still pretty streamlined, almost to a bad sense. I wish there was just a tiny bit more depth, or something like the previous Yakuza games had, which is different fighting styles. Alternate ways to try and handle different situations besides just rage mode or normal mode. The other small issue I have is, without spoiling anything, there are multiple cities you visit in this game, and each one is part of a main story quest. However, you can't leave them until you've finished whatever that mission is. Now, the reason this kind of annoyed me is, occasionally, I'd want to go back to Tokyo and play some arcade games, because honestly, they are so addictive. I absolutely love them, and sometimes I just wanted to go back and do something silly or finish a side quest. However, even though there are taxi cabs in this game, you can't take them to different cities. They're only used for whatever city you're currently in to get around town. I wish that they opened that up a little bit. It feels weird that this is an open world game that has such contained moments to it. That being said, while these are detriments, they never get in the way of just how freaking fun this game is. If you have never tried this series out and you've heard the name over the years, this is probably the right time to start. Yakuza Kiwami and Yakuza 0 coming out last year has really introduced a lot of new people to this really weird and quirky world, and I'm glad that people are hopefully probably going to pick this up, because there is a lot to enjoy. Okay, so we've heard some good and some bad, but let's go over to the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving Yakuza 6, The Song of Life, a 9 out of 10. I've seen people say in the past that this series sort of feels like a new version of Shenmue, and after beating this game, I have to say they're kind of right. Something about getting to wander around and get into trouble when you least expect it really reminds me of Ryu in all the best ways. Thanks so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Oh, hi. I'm just working on the next video. If you want to see what it is, go ahead and click this button and you can subscribe. Also, if you click these video links, you can see my latest review and my latest top 10. Now I'm just going to sit here for a minute and wait for you to subscribe. Oh, I guess I could put on these giant glasses. I literally found these on a roller coaster.